Hi there. In this video, we'll try to understand the difference between delete and truncate operation in Oracle. So, in our previous video, we tried to understand what are different DML operations, and I also mentioned that I'm going to explain the detailed difference between delete and truncate in a separate video, and we'll also try to understand why truncate is part of DDL operation but not part of DML operation, right? Okay, so here are different aspects that we're going to cover, which are primarily the differences between truncate and delete. So one is like type of operation what we perform, and obviously like DML stands for data manipulation language, which is to delete the data from a table, and then truncate comes under DDL operation, which is like to again remove all the data from the table, and delete does the row by row processing. So that means like whenever you try to delete the data, it is going to delete one by one row from the table, whereas truncate operation will just wipe out all the blocks that are associated to the table, and by doing so it doesn't need to do row by row operation. Instead it can delete the data from all the blocks at once, so it is going to be much more faster. And then truncate operation doesn't support any filter conditions or anything, as it is like at the table level operation. Whereas if you see that the where clause is supported by the delete operation, which means that even if you have 100 million rows and you want to specific maybe like 10 15 rows or like million rows, you can still delete it based on where condition that you are going to specify. And then rollback. So in case if you delete the data and if you want to go back to the previous state, in case if you did not commit after deleting the data, you can still apply the rollback command and then you can go back to the previous state, which means that you can get the old data. Whereas if you apply the truncate operation, it cannot be restored back until unless you have the backup in the form of archive logs, which needs to be restored, and then you have to be imported into the table. Otherwise, truncate doesn't support any data backup. And then we have triggers. So let's say that like you have a trigger on a table, and whenever you perform any operation on top of the table, you would like to capture the changes and then put them into a different table, or you want to take some action whenever there is a change on the table, then usually like we use triggers. So if you perform delete operation, then the trigger will also be fired in case if the trigger is configured to be executed whenever there is a delete operation that has been performed. However, for truncate, the trigger will not be executed by default. And then we also have logs. So both delete and will try to acquire the whereas like delete trying to acquire the lock at the row level, and the table is going to acquire the lock at the table level, which means that anybody who is trying to select the data, it is not going to block. But if somebody has inserted the data in some other session and they did not commit it, then the table will try to acquire the lock, and then it will realize that there is a lock on the target table, and then it will not be able to truncate it, so it will fail immediately. And then we have impact on structure. So delete operation doesn't have any impact on the structure, whereas truncate operation, if we see that it has a structure, like it is going to reset entire storage parameters like back to the original state by wiping out the memory from all the blocks that are associated to the table, right? And execution speed, as I mentioned, delete is going to be much more slower because it has to do row by row processing. In case if you have millions or billions of rows in the table, and then you would like to delete the data, this is going to be much more slower. Instead, if you perform the truncate operation, you can truncate rows at once. I mean, basically the table. So do remember that truncate will also provide option to truncate the partitions, not the whole table. In case if your table is like partition, truncate the data from a specific partition all at once, you can still use it option. At the same time, you can also use the delete operation in case if you want to delete all the data from a specific partition, but it's not going to make any other difference. End of the day, truncate is going to be much more faster still compared to the delete operation, right? Let's say that somebody has inserted the data into a table, and then they're trying to, I mean, like you are trying to delete the data from the same table, and the other session did not commit the data. Yet you'll be able to delete the data from your table because the other session did not commit. However, if someone else I mean, like has inserted the data into a table, and then part of your session you're in truncate the table, then it will not be able to truncate, and immediately it's going to throw an error stating that unable to acquire the lock on the target table. In such kind of cases, what you'll have to do is like maybe you will by using the sleep operation, or it is able to acquire the lock on the target table, then and there itself it can get executed even if it gets fraction of seconds, right? So There is a basic difference between delete and truncate. What is most interesting, and in case you feel that can be elaborated, I can probably explain in the comments, or I can make a separate video. Till then, have a good day. Bye bye.